You walked in and the cold hit your face before the door closed behind you. The glass case ran the full length of the counter, and behind it every tub wore a handwritten label: burgundy cherry, frozen pudding, butter brickle. You knew your order before you reached the front of the line, and it was never vanilla. That was the ice cream parlor before the big dairy companies decided what Americans were allowed to eat. The flavor sitting at number 14 was so popular that entire parlors built their name around it. And what lands at number 1 was once the most requested flavor in the country, but ask anyone under 50 today, and they will not even know the name. These were not gimmicks or limited runs. They were the menu, and one by one, they were pulled without a word. Here are 25 famous ice cream parlor flavors that vanished after the 1960s. Number 25. Frozen pudding. This was not pudding, and it was not soft serve. Frozen pudding was a dense, custardy ice cream loaded with candied fruit, chopped almonds, and enough rum flavoring to make the whole scoop smell like a holiday kitchen. Parlors across the Northeast served it from the late 1800s straight through the 1950s, and it was the formal choice. You ordered frozen pudding when you were taking someone out and wanted to show you knew the menu. The name killed it. A younger generation walked in, heard pudding, and expected something from a box. Parlors got tired of explaining the difference. They swapped it out for flavors that sold themselves, and by the early 1970s, frozen pudding had disappeared from every case in the country without a single customer asking where it went. Number 24, grape ice cream. You could get grape soda, grape candy, grape bubblegum, and grape popsicles, but grape ice cream quietly disappeared. The problem was always texture. Grapes carry too much water, and when you freeze that water inside a cream base, you get ice crystals instead of something smooth. Small parlors made it work because they churned in tiny batches and served it the same afternoon. When production moved to factories and freezer trucks, the formula fell apart. Artificial grape flavoring never tasted right in cream the way it did in sugar water. By the mid-1960s, nearly every major dairy had dropped it. You can still find grape ice cream at a handful of small creameries if you look hard enough, but the parlor version is a memory now. Before I go any further, for the folks who love old recipes and want to keep cooking the way our grandparents did, I put together something called the Vintage Recipe Guide. It is a collection of recipes like the ones in these videos, all in one place. You can find it on my website, vintagelifestyleusa.com. That is the only time I will mention it. If you want it, it is there. Now back to the list. Number 23. Ginger ice cream. Real ginger ice cream had bite. Not the polite warmth of a ginger snap, but a sharp, peppery heat that started on your tongue and bloomed through your sinuses. Parlors made it with fresh, grated ginger root cooked into the custard base, and the color came out a pale, muddy gold that looked nothing like the pastel tubs around it. It was never the best seller. Ginger was the flavor for adults, for people who found strawberry too sweet and chocolate too obvious. That narrow audience kept it alive for decades, but narrow audiences do not survive consolidation. When the big dairies took over local production, ginger was one of the first flavors cut. Too strong, too polarizing, too hard to make it scale without losing the root. Number 22. Brown bread ice cream. This one sounds made up, but it was a New England institution. You took stale brown bread, toasted the crumbs until they went dark and nutty, folded them into a sweet cream base with a touch of molasses, and froze it. The texture was unlike anything else in the case. Crunchy and smooth at the same time, with a malty, almost coffee-like depth from the toasted crumbs. Howard Johnson's carried a version for years. Drugstore counters in Massachusetts and Connecticut served it alongside their standard rotation. But breadcrumbs in ice cream is a hard sell to someone who has never tasted it. And once the parlors that made it closed their doors, nobody picked it up. The recipe still exists in old cookbooks, but the flavor is gone from every commercial freezer in the country. Number 21. Tutti Frutti. The name meant all the fruits and the flavor delivered on it. Cherries, pineapple, citrus peel, and sometimes a handful of raisins or chopped dates, all candied and folded into a vanilla base. Every parlor had its own version, and arguing about whose was better was half the fun. Tutti Frutti was the kind of flavor that made you slow down because every bite tasted a little different. The factory version killed it. Mass production turned those distinct candied fruits into rubbery, flavorless bits of dyed sugar, and the taste gap between the Parlor version and the carton version was too wide. Customers stopped ordering it. By the late 1960s, the tubs marked Tutti Frutti were mostly gone from the case. The Parlor case was never just a freezer. It was a menu that told you where you were. A shop in coastal Maine had flavors a shop in downtown Memphis would never carry, and both of them had things you could not find at the place across town. Every Parlor owner made choices: what to churn, what to stock, what to drop when something sold too slowly on a hot Saturday. Those choices created variety, and that variety made walking into an ice cream parlor feel like walking into a place that belonged to someone. When the big dairy companies took over distribution in the 1960s and 1970s, they replaced that variety with efficiency. 30 flavors became 12, 12 became 8. The case got simpler, and the ice cream got the same everywhere. Number 20. Orange Pineapple. This was a sherbet-adjacent ice cream that split the difference between citrus and tropical. Real orange juice and crushed pineapple mixed into a light cream base, and the result was tangy and cold and almost startlingly refreshing on a July afternoon. It was a summer staple. Kids ordered it because it tasted like a creamsicle with something extra. Adults ordered it because it felt lighter than a full scoop of chocolate or vanilla. The flavor needed real fruit to work, and real fruit meant real spoilage, short shelf life, and unpredictable texture from batch to batch. None of those problems matter when you are churning 20 quarts a day in the back room. All of them matter when you are shipping frozen tubs across 3 states. Number 19. Burgundy Cherry. This was not maraschino cherry ice cream. This was not cherry vanilla with red streaks running through it. Burgundy cherry was its own thing entirely, and the name meant exactly what it said. Dark, sweet Bing cherries soaked in burgundy wine, folded into a rich cream base that turned the whole scoop a deep, bruised purple. The color alone set it apart from everything else in the case. Parlors that carried burgundy cherry treated it like their prestige flavor. It cost more to make because the cherries had to be soaked for days, sometimes a full week before they were ready. You could not rush it. The wine broke down the fruit just enough to make it soft, but not mushy, and it left behind a warmth in the cream that was not quite boozy, but not quite innocent either. Ordering it felt adult. It was the flavor that separated the kids at the counter from the regulars who knew what they wanted. The customers who loved it were loyal in a way that strawberry customers never were. They came back for burgundy cherry specifically, and if the parlor ran out, some of them walked right back out the door. That kind of devotion should have kept the flavor alive, but devotion does not scale. When production shifted to centralized dairies, the wine-soaked cherry process was too slow, too expensive, and too inconsistent for factory batches. Artificial cherry flavoring with red dye replaced it in the late 1960s, and what came out of the carton bore no resemblance to what used to come out of the case. You can still find cherry ice cream anywhere today. Every brand makes one. But if you set a scoop of modern cherry next to what the parlors used to churn, you would not recognize them as relatives. The cherry ice cream that survived is a different product wearing the same name. Number 18. Lemon Custard. Lemon ice cream still exists in some form, but lemon custard was a different animal. It started with a cooked egg custard base, rich and thick, and the lemon came from real juice and fresh zest stirred in while the custard was still warm. The result was tangy and heavy at the same time, with a silky mouthfeel that modern lemon sorbet cannot touch. It was the flavor grandmothers ordered, not because it was mild, but because it reminded them of the lemon curd they spread on toast. When fat-free and light became the marketing language of the 1980s, anything with egg custard in the name sounded like a liability. Parlors replaced it with lemon sorbet, which was cheaper to make and easier to sell. The custard never came back. Number 17. Fig ice cream. Ripe figs have a honeyed sweetness that caramelizes when you cook them down, and that cooked fig paste folded into cream made one of the most complex flavors any parlor ever carried. It tasted like nothing else. Not fruity the way strawberry is fruity. Darker, richer, almost savory at the edges. Fig ice cream was regional, strongest in the South and in California where fig trees grew in backyards and church lots. The flavor depended on fresh, local figs, and that dependency was its death sentence. You could not ship figs across the country in the 1960s without them turning to mush. When the supply chain demanded shelf-stable ingredients, fig was dropped. No substitute existed. Number 16. Licorice. Black licorice ice cream was polarizing in the best possible way. You either loved it or you made a face and pointed at the chocolate. The flavor came from anise extract, or real licorice root, and the color was a dramatic jet black that stained your lips and tongue. Kids treated it like a dare. Adults who grew up on licorice whips and Good and Plenty ordered it without hesitation. It was never a top seller, but it had a devoted following that kept it in the rotation at parlors across the Midwest and Northeast for decades. The problem was not taste. The problem was appearance. As ice cream became more visual, more about presentation in a cup, a pitch-black scoop looked wrong to a generation raised on pastel packaging. Licorice got quietly removed from the case. There is a word for what happened to the American ice cream parlor, and it is not progress. It is standardization. A local parlor owner in 1955 could walk into his kitchen at 4 in the morning and decide to try something new. A fig he bought at the farmer's market. A batch of black walnuts his neighbor dropped off. A bottle of rum his wife brought back from a trip. That freedom to experiment is what created most of the flavors on this list. They were not invented in a laboratory or tested in a focus group. They were invented by a person with a freezer and an idea. When the freezer belonged to a corporation, the ideas stopped. Not because corporations lacked creativity, but because creativity is expensive and vanilla is cheap. Number 15. Banana nut. This was not banana split ice cream, and it was not the fluorescent yellow banana flavor you find today. Banana nut ice cream used real bananas, often overripe ones that had gone soft and deeply sweet, mashed directly into the cream base with chopped walnuts or pecans stirred in at the end. The banana flavor was mellow and round, nothing like the sharp artificial punch of modern banana candy. You tasted the fruit, not a chemist's idea of the fruit. Real bananas oxidize and turn brown in a frozen base, which means the ice cream looked less appealing after a day in the case. That was fine when parlors churned fresh batches every morning. It was unacceptable when cartons sat in a warehouse freezer for weeks before reaching a store shelf. Number 14. Butterscotch. Real butterscotch ice cream was made with brown sugar and butter cooked together until the mixture darkened and thickened into a sauce that smelled like the inside of a candy shop. That sauce got rippled through a vanilla custard base, and the result was one of the richest, warmest flavors any parlor ever served. It was not caramel. People confuse the two today, but butterscotch and caramel are different things made from different sugars cooked to different temperatures. Butterscotch uses brown sugar. Caramel uses white. The distinction matters because it changes everything about the taste. Butterscotch has a molasses depth, a slightly bitter edge, and a warmth that caramel simply does not carry. In the 1950s, butterscotch ranked among the 10 most popular ice cream flavors in the country. Some parlors were known for it specifically. Customers drove past 2 or 3 other shops to get to the one that made the sauce from scratch, because when a parlor got butterscotch right, nothing else in the case came close. Regulars ordered it every visit and never once looked at the board. It was not just a flavor, it was an identity. Then caramel took over. It was cheaper to produce, easier to stabilize, and photographed better under fluorescent light. What the cartons labeled butterscotch by the 1970s was often just caramel with vanilla flavoring and a different word on the lid. The customers could taste the difference. They just could not do anything about it. Today, butterscotch survives as a word on a candy wrapper in a pudding box. The ice cream flavor that once gave a parlor its reputation is almost entirely gone. Walk into any shop today and ask for butterscotch. Most of them will point you toward salted caramel instead. Number 13. Peppermint stick. The modern version of peppermint ice cream is a smooth pink or green base with candy cane pieces folded in. The old version was different. Peppermint stick ice cream started with real peppermint stick candy, the hard red and white striped kind you got at the drugstore counter, crushed into jagged shards and stirred into a plain sweet cream base. Every bite had a crunch. The peppermint was sharper than what you get from extract, and the sugar from the candy created streaks of crystallized sweetness through the cream. It was a textural experience as much as a flavor one. Crushed candy does not hold up in a factory freezer. The shards absorb moisture, go soft, and dissolve into the base within days. Parlors served it fresh. Factories could not. Number 12. Black walnut. English walnuts are mild. Black walnuts are not. Black walnuts have a tannic, almost smoky intensity that sits somewhere between a pecan and a cup of dark coffee, and when you fold them into ice cream, they take over. The flavor does not play well with others. It dominates. That boldness was what made black walnut ice cream a staple at Midwestern parlors for decades. Farmers brought in black walnuts by the sack every fall, and parlors cracked them by hand because they were free and they were everywhere. Black walnut shells are brutally hard. When labor costs went up and the supply chain went commercial, nobody wanted to crack them anymore. English walnuts were easier, milder, and cheaper. They won. The flavor lost its teeth and then it lost its name. Number 11. Eggnog. Today, eggnog ice cream appears for about 6 weeks in December and vanishes before the new year. That is not how it used to be. Eggnog was a year-round parlor flavor through the 1940s and 1950s, served every month, not just the holidays. The base was heavy with egg yolk, nutmeg, and a whisper of vanilla, and it tasted like the drink your grandmother made at Thanksgiving, frozen solid and scooped into a dish. It was rich enough that one scoop felt like a meal. Seasonal marketing killed it. Dairy companies learned that limiting availability created demand, so eggnog became a holiday product. Once it was seasonal, parlors stopped stocking it year-round. The flavor did not disappear entirely. Its calendar shrank until there was almost nothing left of it. What we lost when the parlors closed was not just flavor. It was the person behind the counter who knew what you liked, the one who started scooping before you finished your sentence because you had been ordering the same thing since you were 9 years old. That relationship between the maker and the customer shaped everything. It kept strange flavors alive because the owner could hand you a taste on a tiny spoon and say, "Try this." It kept quality honest because if the butterscotch was off, you would say so to his face, and he would hear it. Industrial ice cream replaced that feedback loop with market research and focus groups and quarterly reports. None of those tools can replicate a man with a scoop and a simple question. What would you like today? Number 10. Biscuit tortoni. This was the most elegant thing in any parlor case. Biscuit tortoni was an Italian-American creation, a frozen mousse made with heavy cream, crushed amaretti cookies, and a splash of rum or marsala, served in a small pleated paper cup with a single toasted almond pressed into the top. It was not scooped from a tub. Each portion was molded individually, and that presentation made it feel like dessert at a restaurant, not a casual treat at a counter. Italian-American neighborhoods in New York, Philadelphia, and Boston kept biscuit tortoni alive long after most parlors had moved on. You could still find it at a red sauce restaurant in the 1970s, served at the end of a Sunday dinner. By the 1980s, even those restaurants had let it go. The paper cups disappeared, and with them went one of the most refined frozen desserts this country ever produced. Number 9. Butterbrickle. Butterbrickle was toffee. Thin, brittle sheets of buttery toffee, shattered into small pieces and folded through a vanilla base so that every other bite hit something crunchy and sweet and slightly burnt around the edges. Sealtist and a few other regional dairies made it a flagship flavor in the 1950s, and it sold well enough to earn permanent space in the freezer aisle. The name itself was part of the appeal. Butterbrickle sounded handmade and old-fashioned even when it was not. The toffee bits were the weak link. They absorbed moisture from the ice cream and went chewy after a few days in the freezer, which meant the carton you bought on Tuesday tasted different from the one you bought on Saturday. Heath Bar Crunch replaced it in the 1980s using chocolate-coated toffee that held its crunch better. The original disappeared under the weight of a better candy bar. Number 8. Maple Walnut. Real maple walnut ice cream required real maple syrup. Not maple flavoring, not pancake syrup, not the brown-tinted corn syrup that fills most bottles on grocery shelves today. You cooked the maple syrup down until it concentrated into something almost smoky, swirled it through the base, and dropped in toasted walnut halves that gave every scoop a crunch. The flavor was enormous, sweet and bitter and nutty all at once, with a backbone of something that tasted like autumn in Vermont, even if you had never been there. Maple walnut was a favorite in the Northeast and Great Lakes region, where real maple syrup was local and affordable. It held on longer than most flavors on this list, surviving into the 1980s at some dairies, but the cost of real syrup eventually priced it out. What replaced it was maple-flavored vanilla, and the difference is the difference between a forest and a parking lot. Number 7. Rum Raisin. The raisins came soaked, not in water, but in dark rum, sometimes for a full day, until they plumped up and turned soft and fragrant. You stirred them into a sweet custard base, and the rum flavoring seeped through the whole scoop so that every bite carried a low, warm glow, even though the alcohol itself had mostly cooked off. Rum Raisin was an adult flavor in an era when ice cream parlors served adults as often as they served children. It was a date night scoop, a Friday evening scoop, a flavor that said you did not need sprinkles to enjoy yourself. It has not fully vanished. You can still find it in a few places, but the parlor version with real rum-soaked fruit is functionally extinct. What survives is a shadow with artificial flavoring and raisins that were never anywhere near a bottle. Number 6. Spumoni. 3 layers: chocolate, pistachio, and cherry, pressed together in a mold and sliced, so each portion showed all 3 colors in a cross-section that looked like a small flag. Sometimes there were candied fruits embedded in the pistachio layer. Sometimes a thin shell of dark chocolate separated the colors. Every Italian-American parlor and pizzeria had its own version, and the differences between them were a matter of neighborhood pride. Spumoni demanded precision. The layers had to set at different rates, and if one melted faster than the others, the whole structure collapsed into a muddy puddle. Factories tried to automate the layering process and never quite figured it out. The commercial version was denser, duller, and missing the candied fruit. You can still find spumoni at an occasional Italian market, but the molded, sliced, 3-color spectacle that used to anchor the parlor case is largely a thing of the past. Number 5. Coconut. Old-fashioned coconut ice cream was made with real shredded coconut toasted until it went golden, then stirred into a coconut milk and cream base. The texture was rough and interesting, full of chewy bits that caught between your teeth. It tasted like a macaroon somebody froze. Modern coconut ice cream is smooth, often dairy-free, and made for people avoiding lactose. The 2 products share a name and nothing else. The parlor version disappeared because toasted coconut shreds absorb freezer odors and go stale in days. Shelf life was measured in hours, not weeks. When ice cream moved from the parlor case to the grocery freezer, coconut was one of the first casualties. The flavor needed to be eaten fresh, and fresh stopped being the business model. Number 4. Burnt almond. The almonds were roasted past golden into a deep, almost bitter brown, then chopped roughly and folded into a vanilla or butter base. Burnt almond ice cream had a smoky, toasted quality that no other nut flavor could match. It was not sweet in the way you expect ice cream to be sweet. It was sophisticated, the kind of flavor that tasted better the more you ate it because the bitterness of the almonds balanced the sugar of the cream. Parlors in Pennsylvania and the Mid-Atlantic made it a regional specialty, and a few shops kept it as a signature for decades. The problem was the word burnt. By the 1970s, it sounded like a mistake, not a technique. Rebranded as toasted almond, the flavor lost its edge. The almonds got lighter, the roast got gentler, and the result was milder and less interesting. What survived under a new name was not the same flavor. Number 3. Pistachio. The pistachio ice cream you find today is bright green, artificially colored, and flavored with almond extract as much as actual pistachios. The original was none of those things. Real pistachio ice cream was a pale, almost gray-green, made by grinding roasted pistachios into the base until the natural oils turned the cream a muted, earthy color. The flavor was subtle and nutty, not sweet, nothing like the neon green product that took its place. Italian gelaterias in the United States kept the real version alive through the 1960s. Pistachios were expensive and hard to source in bulk, so the flavor was always a specialty, never a cheap standard. When artificial coloring and almond extract offered a faster path to something that looked like pistachio ice cream, the industry took it without hesitation. The label stayed the same. Everything inside the carton changed. Number 2. Frozen custard. This was ice cream with eggs in the base, churned slowly in a machine that folded in less air than a standard freezer. So the result came out denser and heavier and more intensely flavored than anything else in the case. A scoop of frozen custard weighed more in your hand than a scoop of regular ice cream. You could feel the difference before you tasted it. Parlors that served frozen custard had their own machines, and the custard was made fresh throughout the day because it did not hold well. You ate it within an hour of it being churned, or you missed it at its best. That immediacy was the whole point. The flavor was warm vanilla with a richness that coated your mouth and stayed there long after you swallowed. A few custard stands still operate in parts of the Midwest, but the parlor tradition of fresh custard churned behind the counter and handed over the glass is gone from most of the country. What remains is the name on a franchise sign, not the original experience. Number 1. Nestle Road. If you are over 60, you might remember this name. If you are under 50, you almost certainly do not. Nestle Road ice cream was a frozen confection of chestnut puree, candied fruits, maraschino cherries, and rum-soaked raisins folded into a rich custard base. It was named after a 19th-century Russian diplomat, and by the 1940s it had become one of the most popular flavors in the country. Parlors in New York City built their dessert menus around it. Restaurants served it at the end of formal dinners. Nestle Road was the flavor you ordered when ice cream was not a casual thing but an occasion. The chestnut base gave it an earthiness that no other flavor could match, something deeper than chocolate, more complex than vanilla, and completely unlike anything in the modern freezer aisle. It vanished because chestnut puree was expensive, the candied fruit preparation took days, and no factory could replicate what a parlor kitchen produced by hand. By the 1970s, Nestle Road was gone. Not reformulated, not rebranded, gone. It is the only flavor on this list that left no descendant, no cheap imitation, no ghost of itself on a grocery shelf. It simply ceased to exist, and the country moved on as if it had never been there at all. Number 23. Brown sugar fudge. This was the candy that sat on a paper plate next to the sparklers, and people grabbed a square every time they walked past. Brown sugar, evaporated milk, butter, and a pinch of salt. You boiled it to soft ball stage, pulled it off the heat, beat it with a wooden spoon until your arm burned, and poured it into a buttered pan. The texture was somewhere between caramel and praline. Grainy in a way that modern candy never is because nobody had a thermometer. You judged it by dropping a bead of syrup into cold water and pressing it between your fingers. If it held a ball, it was ready. If it fell apart, you boiled it longer. Every woman had her own threshold. Number 16. Persimmon pudding. Wild persimmons are not friendly fruit. Bite into one before the first hard frost and your mouth will turn inside out. But wait for the frost. Gather the soft orange fruit off the ground under the tree. Push the pulp through a colander to get the seeds out, and suddenly you have a sweet, dark, honey-flavored mash that tastes like the woods in October. The grandmother in Wise County, Virginia, stirred the pulp into a batter of flour, sorghum, buttermilk, an egg, and a spoon of soda. She baked the pudding in a sheet pan over a slow fire for 90 minutes. It came out dense, dark brown, slightly spongy. cut into squares, eaten warm with a pat of butter melting into the top. A pudding made of a fruit that grew for free on a fence line. 30 cents worth of flour. Nothing else needed buying. The name came from the banks of the river, dark, dense, layered like something geological, and whoever made the first one understood that chocolate could be stacked higher than anyone thought reasonable. The Mississippi mud pie that spread through American home kitchens in the 1970s descended from the Deep South mud cake of the 1920s, traced by some food historians to Vicksburg, where a single-layer fudge cake was topped with marshmallow sauce and frosting while still hot, the two layers sinking together into something molten. By the time the Chart House restaurant chain put it on its menu in the 1970s, the recipe had grown into a layered production of brownie base, chocolate custard, whipped cream, and pecans. Home cooks stripped it back to what they could manage. Fudge base baked in a 9x13, marshmallows pressed in hot, fudge frosting poured over top. Neither cake nor pie nor pudding, but all three at once. Number 12. Blueberry buckle. A single-layer cake with blueberries folded into the batter and a crumb topping that buckled and cracked as it baked. Butter, sugar, flour, an egg, milk, and a pint of fresh blueberries. The crumb topping was just more butter, sugar, flour, and cinnamon rubbed together with your fingers until it looked like wet sand. You spread it over the batter and the whole thing went into the oven. When it came out, the topping had broken into jagged golden pieces pressed into the surface of the cake. It was not pretty. It looked like a mistake, but it tasted like a blueberry donut crossed with a coffee cake, and it was ready in under an hour with no special equipment. A 9x13 pan and a mixing bowl. That was it. Number 22. Sugar on cornbread with sweet milk. This was not a company dessert. This was what a child got when a child was loved and there was nothing else. A wedge of hot cornbread broken into a thick china bowl, a teaspoon of white sugar if it was a holiday, a drizzle of sorghum if it was not, a pour of warm cow's milk over the top, from the family cow, still faintly tasting of grass. The child ate it with a big spoon, sitting on a kitchen chair that was too tall, legs swinging. In Knott County, Kentucky, this was called cornbread and sweet milk. In Letcher County, they called it crumblings. In parts of West Virginia, they called it cornbread soakey. The name depended on the ridge. The feeling was the same. You do not forget the first time someone hands you something warm and sweet and tells you it is all for you. The Harvey Wallbanger cake proved it could do the same with a cocktail. The Harvey Wallbanger was a drink: vodka, orange juice, and a float of Galliano, the tall yellow Italian liqueur nobody bought for any other reason. And by the early 1970s, it was the fashionable order at every bar worth visiting. A 1972 cooking booklet included with a Sunbeam electric fry pan took the drink and baked it. Yellow cake mix, instant vanilla pudding powder, eggs, orange juice, vodka, and Galliano, topped with a spiked orange glaze poured on warm. Serving it meant you were stylish, experimental, possibly dangerous. When the cocktail went out of fashion in the late 1970s, the cake followed. The flavor it left behind went with it. Number 6. Lemon icebox pie. Sweetened condensed milk, egg yolks, and fresh lemon juice stirred together and poured into a graham cracker crust. No baking required in most versions. You mixed it, poured it, and put it in the icebox for 4 hours. The acid in the lemon juice reacted with the condensed milk and set the filling firm without any heat at all. It was chemistry disguised as cooking. The flavor was sharp and sweet at the same time, cold and dense and smooth enough that your fork left clean lines in the surface. Lemon icebox pie survived the outdoor heat because it lived in the cold. You pulled it out at the last minute, sliced it fast, and served it before it had time to soften. Every woman in the South knew this recipe by heart. It was the first pie most girls learned to make because you could not ruin it. The margin for error was almost zero. Number 19. Fried hand pies with dried apples, not baked, not oven puffed. Fried, in a black skillet, in an inch of bacon grease. Half-moons of biscuit dough folded over a spoonful of those same dried apples from the porch rafters, stewed down with a little cinnamon and whatever sweetener was in the jug. The crimped edge was sealed with fork tines. The pies went into the hot grease for 2 minutes aside and came out dark gold, blistered, hissing. On Sunday afternoons in the coal camps outside Harlan, a miner's wife would make 24 of them at once, wrap them in a clean flour sack dish towel, and a man carried 6 of them down into the mine the next morning in a tin lunch bucket. They were still warm at breakfast. That was the trick of the hand pie. It traveled. Ella Rita Helfrich of Houston, Texas, took second place at the 1966 Pillsbury Bake-Off with a chocolate bundt cake that did something nobody could explain. Butter, sugar, eggs, flour, walnuts, and a packet of Jiffy Double Dutch fudge frosting mix went into the batter, and when it came out of the oven, the outside had set into a brownie dark crust while the center remained soft and fudgy, a tunnel of chocolate running through the entire ring. No filling was added. It formed itself. The nuts were structural. Without them, the tunnel collapsed. Pillsbury received so many requests that the recipe may have done more to popularize the Nordic ware bundt pan than any other single dish of the 1970s. By the 1990s, Pillsbury discontinued the frosting mix the recipe required. Home bakers spent years trying to replicate it with cocoa powder and powdered sugar. Some got close. The woman who invented it passed on long before the frosting mix did. And if the tunnel of fudge proved the kitchen could surprise you with chocolate, number 13. Watermelon rind preserves. You took the white rind after the party had eaten all the pink flesh, peeled off the green skin, cut it into cubes and soaked it overnight in lime water to firm it up. The next day, you simmered those cubes in a syrup made from sugar, lemon juice, and a few slices of fresh ginger. You cooked it low and slow until the rind turned translucent and the syrup went thick as honey. People spooned it over vanilla ice cream, spread it on biscuits, or ate it straight from the jar with a fork. Nothing was wasted. The watermelon was the main event, the rind was dessert, and the seeds got spit off the porch. Making watermelon rind preserves was standard practice in the rural South until the 1960s. Today, most people throw the rind straight into the trash. Number 21. Blackberry jam cake with caramel icing. The blackberries came from the fence line at the back of the tobacco patch. Every July, a grandmother would send 5 or 6 children out with lard buckets tied around their waists with baler twine and tell them not to come back until every bucket had a dark, heavy bottom. She spent the next 2 weeks making jam. A quart jar held about 14 cents worth of sugar and a summer's worth of work. That jam went into the cake at Christmas. 3 layers, spiced with cinnamon, allspice, and clove, buttermilk for tang, a full pint of blackberry jam folded into the batter. Over it all, a sheet of caramel icing poured hot so it set into a thin sugar shell you had to crack with the side of your fork. Every serious Kentucky grandmother had a jam cake recipe and she did not share it. Not in writing. Not even with her own daughters, some of them, until the day she knew she was dying. She always started the crust the night before, crushed pecans pressed into flour and butter, baked until barely golden, cooled completely before anything touched it. In the morning came the cream cheese layer, beaten smooth with powdered sugar and folded into Cool Whip until it held its shape. Then the lemon pudding layer, spread cold and level with a spatula. Then another cloud of Cool Whip on top. 4 hours in the refrigerator, sometimes overnight, and it came out cold and sliceable in clean squares. Lemon Lush had been around since the 1960s, but the convenience of the 1970s, instant pudding, tubs of Cool Whip, cream cheese at every grocery, turned it into a potluck staple from Ohio to Georgia. It was the dessert people asked her to bring. She brought it every time without being asked. After she was gone, nobody could remember exactly how thin she made the cream cheese layer or why it always tasted cooler than everyone else's. Number 11. Icebox cake. Nabisco famous chocolate wafers stacked with sweetened whipped cream and left in the refrigerator overnight. The cream softened the wafers into something like a moist chocolate cake, and when you sliced it on the diagonal, you got perfect stripes of dark and white. No baking, no oven, You assembled it in 5 minutes and let time do the work. The recipe was printed right on the back of the cookie box for decades, and women treated it like a secret anyway. They brought it to cookouts in a glass baking dish with foil over the top and accepted compliments as though they had been in the kitchen all morning. It faded when Nabisco changed the wafer recipe and nearly discontinued the cookies entirely. The texture was never the same after that. Number 17. Buttermilk pie. Buttermilk was not wasted in a hillbilly kitchen. Not ever. What was left after the butter came out of the churn went into biscuits, into pancakes, into the dog's bowl on a hot afternoon, and once or twice a month, into a pie. A cup and a half of buttermilk, a cup and a half of sugar, 3 eggs, a stick of butter, flour, lemon if a neighbor down the road had brought one up from Tennessee. The custard set creamy and tangy with a thin, crackled sugar skin on top. A farm wife in Owsley County named it a desperation pie because she made it in the weeks before the first peach came ripe. Her children called it the best pie she made, but she never believed them. Nobody turned on the oven. That was the point. She brought butter, sugar, cocoa, and milk to a rolling boil in a saucepan, watched the clock for 90 seconds exactly, not 80, not 100, and pulled it from the burner. Rolled oats went in, then a spoonful of peanut butter if she had it, then vanilla, and she dropped the mixture by spoonfuls onto waxed paper before it could set. You had 3 minutes before it stiffened. The cookies looked wrong when fresh, loose and shiny, almost wet, but inside 20 minutes they hardened into dense, fudgy rounds. In Midwestern church cookbooks from the 1950s, this recipe appeared as haystacks and preacher cookies. Boil it too long and the sugar made the batch grainy. Too short and they never set. She knew without a clock. Number 24. Pineapple upside-down cake. You melted butter and brown sugar in a cast iron skillet, laid down canned pineapple rings in a perfect circle, dropped a maraschino cherry in every hole, and poured yellow cake batter right on top. It baked for 40 minutes, and then came the moment that made every kid in the kitchen hold their breath. You flipped that skillet onto a plate in one fast motion. If you did it right, the caramelized sugar ran down the sides like amber glass. If you hesitated, half the pineapple stayed stuck to the pan. That flip was a performance. Women practiced it. They had opinions about the right pan, the right temperature, the exact second to turn. Nobody under 50 makes one anymore. Before I go any further, for the folks who want more recipes like these all in one place, I put together the Vintage Recipe Guide. It is a collection of the best old recipes I have come across. You can find it on my website, vintagelifestyleusa.com. The link is right below this video. I will not push it again. If you want it, it is there. Now back to the list. Number 25, dried apple stack cake. A woman in Perry County, Kentucky, would start this cake in the middle of September, the same week her apples came off the trees. She peeled the fruit, quartered it, threaded it on cotton string, and hung the string from the rafters of her back porch for 3 weeks until the pieces rattled like old leather. That is how she kept the taste of September alive all the way to Christmas. The cake itself was 6 thin layers, sometimes 7, each one more biscuit than cake. Flour, sorghum molasses, buttermilk, lard, 1 egg. She baked them in a cast iron skillet, one at a time, because she only owned the 1 skillet. Between each layer, she spread a dark, spiced paste of those dried apples, cooked down with water and a little sugar if she had it. The cake had to sit for 3 days before anybody was allowed to cut it. You do not rush a stacked cake, you wait for it. The folklore says a bride was counted popular by how many layers her neighbors brought, each woman walking up the path with a single thin round wrapped in a dish towel. Ella Mae's daughter had 11 layers at her wedding. Ella Mae cried for an hour. You could not make it without the liqueurs, and everyone at the table knew that. The grasshopper pie was built around crème de menthe and crème de cacao, the 2 halves of the cocktail it borrowed its name from, and no substitute produced the same cool, mint dark chocolate alchemy. Crushed Nabisco chocolate wafers pressed into a pie plate with melted butter formed the crust. The filling was miniature marshmallows melted in a double boiler, then folded with both liqueurs and whipped cream until it turned the pale, luminous green of shallow water. 4 hours in the freezer. At the table, a vegetable peeler dragged across semi-sweet chocolate sent dark curls falling across the green surface. The transformation of a cocktail into a frozen dessert was exactly the kitchen logic the 1970s loved. Number 9. Blackberry Grunt. Wild blackberries stewed on the stovetop with sugar and a little water until they collapsed into a dark purple sauce. Then you dropped biscuit dough in spoonfuls on top, clamped the lid on, and let it steam for 15 minutes without peaking. The dumplings puffed up and the bottom halves turned purple where they sat in the berry juice. The name came from the sound the berries made bubbling under the dough. It grunted. You ate it hot, straight from the pot, with heavy cream poured over the top. Blackberry Grunt belonged to New England and the upper Midwest, where the berries grew thick in July along every road ditch and abandoned lot. Free food turned into a free dessert, and it tasted better than anything behind a bakery window. Number 24. Sorghum Molasses Cookies. You have to understand something about sorghum to understand why these cookies existed. Sorghum is not molasses. Sorghum is the juice pressed out of a tall cane-like grass, boiled down in a flat pan over a wood fire until it turns the color of dark honey and tastes like a field at dusk. A gallon of it in 1962 cost $1.50 from the neighbor up the road who owned the mule and the press. A gallon of white sugar cost 4 times that at the store in town, and town was a 2-hour drive. So you used what you had. Mrs. Arlie Burgess in Clay County, West Virginia, made a tin full of sorghum cookies every Saturday for 51 years. Flour, lard, sorghum, soda, ginger, a pinch of salt. She rolled them thin as a dime and baked them on the stove. The children got 2 each after supper. But her grandchildren, grown now, still say they have never tasted anything sweeter. That is not an exaggeration. That is memory, doing what memory does. The recipe lived in church cookbooks and was never on the back of any package, which meant you had to know someone. Chocolate chips and butter melted over low heat until smooth, then pulled from the burner and cooled for 10 full minutes, not 5, because pouring hot chocolate over the marshmallows too soon turned the batch into one solid, shapeless mass with no visible structure at all. Pastel mini marshmallows went in, then chopped walnuts. Everything stirred carefully until every piece was coated. She shook sweetened coconut flakes across a long sheet of waxed paper, spooned half the mixture down the center, and rolled it into a log with her hands, pressing gently to compact the shape. 2 logs wrapped tight. Refrigerator overnight without fail. In the morning, she sliced them on a diagonal with a sharp knife, and each cross-section showed a stained glass pattern. Pastel circles of marshmallow suspended in dark chocolate, ringed in white coconut. At Christmas, the cut faces looked exactly like the windows of the church she had attended since childhood. Nobody in the next generation ever thought to ask for the recipe card. Number 10. Angel Food Cake with Macerated Strawberries. 12 egg whites, cream of tartar, sugar, a cup of cake flour, and 20 minutes of folding so gentle you could hear yourself breathe. The cake baked upside down, hung on a bottleneck to cool, and came out tall, white, and light enough that it bounced when you pressed the top. You sliced it with a serrated knife using a sawing motion because a regular blade would crush it flat. The strawberries were sliced, sugared, and left to sit until they released their juice into a thin red syrup. You spooned the berries over each slice and the juice soaked into the crumb. No frosting, no decoration. The cake was pure white and the berries were pure red, and on the 4th of July, that combination did all the talking. Number 23, Vinegar Pie. Now here is one that will make a modern kitchen flinch. A cup of sugar, 3 tablespoons of flour, 2 eggs, a half cup of white vinegar, water, a pat of butter, 1 crust. That is the whole recipe. No fruit, no cream, no nuts. Just vinegar, cooked until it turns, somehow, into a pale gold custard that tastes a little like lemon pie and a little like nothing you have eaten before. It was a February pie. It was a winter pie. It was a pie you made in the second week of a long month when the fruit cellar was down to the last 3 jars of apple butter and you still wanted to put something sweet on the table for a cold Sunday supper. Women in the hollows of McDowell County, West Virginia, had this recipe memorized. They had to. They made it most weeks of January and February for the best part of a century. It fed 8 people for 9 cents. In the fall of 1974, a month after Nixon resigned, a home cook in Hagerstown, Maryland named Christine Hatcher mixed pistachio pudding into white cake batter, covered the whole thing in green frosting hiding nuts underneath, and named it after the scandal, because of all the nuts in it, she said. White cake mix, pistachio pudding, vegetable oil, club soda, eggs, and coconut flakes baked into a sage green bundt. The frosting was Cool Whip folded with more pistachio pudding, pale and sweet and hiding everything. When Jell-O launched its pistachio pudding mix in 1976, the cake became even easier to assemble. It showed up at every potluck that year, every church supper, every block party, a dessert that let people laugh at something they were still furious about. Today, most people have never heard of it. The cover-up worked. Number 5. Strawberry shortcake, the real kind. Not the spongy yellow cups from a plastic package. Real shortcake was a biscuit. Flour, butter, a little sugar, buttermilk, and a hot oven. You split the biscuit in half while it was still warm, spooned sugared strawberries and their juice over the bottom half, set the top back on, and spooned more berries over that. The cream went on last, poured heavy and cold, not whipped. It pooled around the base and turned pink where it met the berry juice. The trick was the biscuit itself. You handled the dough as little as possible. You patted it, never rolled it. Rolling made it tough. Patting kept the layers flaky, and when you split it open, steam rose out and the inside looked like the pages of a book. That was real shortcake. Everything sold under that name today is just cake with strawberries on it. Number 15. Coffee soup over crumbled biscuit. Here is the part of the list where some of you are about to think I am making it up. I am not. Coffee soup was a real dessert, eaten in real kitchens across the southern mountains for 3 generations, and for many older Appalachian people, it is still the taste that means home. A cold leftover biscuit, a bowl, a pour of hot coffee, thinned with warm milk from the cow, sweetened with a heaped teaspoon of sugar or a thick drizzle of sorghum. A grown man ate it at the end of the evening meal. A child was given a small cup of it before bed on a cold winter night. Here is what I want you to see, and this is the thing most modern people miss. Coffee soup was not a joke and it was not a hardship trick. It was a comfort. A bitter grown-up drink, softened with milk and sugar, poured over the last piece of something their mother had baked that morning. An old man in Letcher County, interviewed for a Foxfire oral history in 1977, said he ate coffee soup 4 times a week for 60 years. He never once thought of it as poor. He thought of it as his. These small, strange desserts were the taste of a specific life. They were not reminders that a family had little. They were reminders that a family had each other at a table, at the end of a hard day, with a warm cup and a piece of bread. That is the whole sermon of hillbilly sweet-making, and you will find it under every item on this list if you look close enough. The fondue pot lived in a cabinet between dinner parties, still in its original box, and bringing it out was a declaration that the evening was an event. The chocolate fondue itself was straightforward: semi-sweet chocolate, heavy cream, a splash of Kirsch or Grand Marnier, melted over a small flame until smooth enough to coat a strawberry cleanly. The social mechanics were the real technique. Everyone dipped in turns. The long, 2-tined fork with the colored ring that marked which was yours, the strawberries and pound cake cubes arranged on the serving platter, the rule that dropping your dipper meant a kiss or a drink depending on the company. Swiss-French communal tradition, revived in America in the 1950s, reached peak saturation in American dinner culture through the 1970s, before fondue pots disappeared into thrift stores by the thousands. The chocolate still works exactly the same way. It is the gathering around it that cannot be replicated. Number 25. Banana pudding. Not the instant kind with a box of Jell-O mix and a tub of Cool Whip. The real one. Vanilla wafers layered with sliced bananas and a cooked custard made from scratch on the stovetop. Eggs, sugar, whole milk, a little flour, and a scrape of real vanilla. You built it in a glass baking dish, shingled the wafers like roof tiles, and let the whole thing sit in the icebox overnight so the cookies went soft and the custard set firm. By morning, it was one solid block of sweetness. At every 4th of July picnic I can remember, somebody's grandmother carried one of these across the yard with both hands, and nobody touched the store-bought cake once it hit the table. It was the dessert that told you the holiday had started. Number 18, chess pie. Chess pie is what you make when you have almost nothing. A stick of butter, a cup of sugar, 2 eggs, a tablespoon of cornmeal, a teaspoon of vinegar, a splash of vanilla if you had vanilla, a pie crust because you could always manage a pie crust out of flour and lard. That is the whole architecture. It bakes into a gold, cracked top over a layer of something between pudding and candy. It is rich in the way a poor family's dessert is rich, which is to say, with the last of what was on the shelf used well. The Appalachian grandmothers who served chess pie at funeral dinners knew a quiet thing. A simple pie made from pantry scrapings says to a grieving family what a fancy cake cannot. It says, "I had you in mind. I stood in my kitchen and I thought of you." In February of 1978, Mrs. L.H. Wiggins from Greensboro, North Carolina, submitted a recipe to Southern Living magazine that would become the most requested in the magazine's history. The hummingbird cake started like banana bread, mashed bananas, flour, sugar, cinnamon, baking soda, but then came crushed pineapple and a full cup of chopped pecans, and the batter turned dense and almost tropical. It baked in round layers, dark gold, the pecans giving each slice a crunch against the soft interior. The cream cheese frosting was thick and tangy, smoothed over the layers and crowned with more pecans. It was not a light cake. It was meant for birthdays and homecomings and Sunday afternoons when someone important was coming to the table. Readers in the southern states searched for the recipe for decades after its publication. Most of them were really searching for the kitchen it had come from. Number 8. Coconut layer cake. 3 layers of white cake, white frosting, and enough shredded coconut pressed into the outside that it looked like a snowball. The coconut came from a real coconut, cracked open with a hammer in the backyard, the meat pried out with a butter knife and grated on a box grater. That alone took an hour. The frosting was a 7-minute icing whipped over a double boiler until it stood in peaks, spread fast before it crusted over. You pressed handfuls of fresh coconut into the sides while it was still sticky. The finished cake looked like it belonged in a magazine, all white and towering and ridiculous on a picnic table next to paper plates and plastic cups. Coconut layer cake disappeared when fresh whole coconuts disappeared from grocery produce sections. The bagged, shredded kind never stuck the same way. The poke cake looked like an ordinary white cake until you ran the handle of a wooden spoon straight down through it, punching holes every inch across the top. That was the whole trick, and if you had never seen it done, you would not have guessed. She mixed a packet of strawberry jello with boiling water, let it cool just enough to stay liquid, and poured it slowly over the warm cake, watching it disappear into the holes and fan through the crumb. Jell-O promoted the recipe in the early 1970s, and it spread fast through neighborhood recipe boxes because it required no frosting skill, just a wooden spoon and patience. The Cool Whip crown went on cold. You could make it the afternoon before a party and forget it until the guests arrived. The first slice always surprised people who had never seen what was hiding inside. Nobody makes it anymore. Number 4. Firecracker Jell-O mold. 3 layers of color, red strawberry Jell-O on the bottom, a white layer made from Knox gelatin mixed with sweetened condensed milk in the middle, and blue raspberry Jell-O on top. You had to wait for each layer to set firm before pouring the next one, which meant the whole process took most of a day. 1 layer at a time, 2 hours in between. The mold was a bundt pan, or a ring mold, greased with a thin coat of vegetable oil so the Jell-O would release clean. When you turned it out onto a platter, the 3 stripes showed clean and bright, and every child at the table stared at it like it was a magic trick. Number 20. peanut butter potato candy. Here is a candy that began as 2 ingredients and stayed that way for 80 years. 1 cold, boiled potato, 2 cups of powdered sugar worked in by hand until a white dough came together under your palms. You rolled it out thin on a floured board, spread peanut butter over the whole sheet, rolled it up like a jelly roll, cut it into coins, pinwheels of brown and white, sweet enough to set your teeth aching. A single potato, a 2-pound bag of sugar from the company store, and a jar of peanut butter made enough candy for a church social of 50. Mrs. Nora Lewis of Mingo County, West Virginia, made it every Christmas Eve from 1944 until 1989. Her grandchildren still fight over the recipe card. 4 lines long. One of them has it framed. The next time you walk into an ice cream shop, look at the case. Count the flavors. Most of what you see was designed in a laboratory and approved by a committee. The Parlor case used to be a different kind of place. Try one of the old recipes this week if you can find one. Make a batch of butterscotch or maple walnut in your own kitchen and see if the taste matches the memory. Hit subscribe if you want more of these stories, and leave a comment telling me which flavor you wish would come back. I am James, and I will see you in the next one.